Excuse me.
Two weeks ago, almost 1,000 maintenance contract workers from the state's 7 power stations went on strike. Their dispute over the state government's move to axe from this month 12-year-old site rate agreements which provide for over-award wages and extras like redundancy packages. State government says site agreements contravene its code of conduct. Some workers say without the site agreements, they'll lose around $100 a week. Maintenance workers met in Newcastle this morning. Halfway through, electrical contractors left to hold separate talks. After 2 hours, iron and metal trades workers, who represent 95% of on-site maintenance contractors, emerged, having supported in principle a motion to return to work under a new two-union agreement.
The members have agreed for AMEU and FIME to sit down and negotiate 134 agreements with a number of contractors on power stations.
As a result, most maintenance workers will be back on the job by tomorrow morning. However, around 100 maintenance contractors remain on strike because their employers have not yet negotiated an enterprise bargaining agreement. In an attempt to force the issue, those returning workers will pay a $20 levy to cover the wages of those on strike. Mary McGill says the two-union agreement will be drawn up and voted on by members next week. If a go to the Federal Industrial Commission for ratification. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
Federal member for Newcastle Alan Morris is chairing the House of Representatives Standing Committee on Community Affairs. Its role is to travel the country, listening to concerns of those working in the field of home and community care, a scheme designed to keep elderly and young disabled people at home and out of institutions. The public forums providing valuable feedback.
All the submissions say it's a good program, and it's the buts that we're exploring. I mean, it can be a lot better program. And what's coming forward basically has been very constructive.
Major concerns include the shortage of nursing home beds, the insensitive withdrawal of home care services from needy clients, and the steady increase in the number of hospital discharges.
The uses that used to go to frail age is now being taken away from people who are frail aged and given to people who have just left hospital. And that's a real problem because the question is whether or not that's a health issue or a community service issue, and that's one of the really big issues we're facing.
The inquiry will take around 9 months, with a discussion paper prepared by January and a final report presented to Federal Parliament by April.
I expect, firstly, that the inquiry will be a very important one, and secondly, that we'll see a lot of changes coming through because of the inquiry.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
A German village complete with post office, railway station, bank and restaurant is set up inside the Germania Club at Warners Bay. Officially titled the German Immersion Centre, its establishment was funded by the Department of School Education. Its first visitors were Year 4, 5 and 6 students from Belmont North and Jules Primary Schools today. Once inside, each student received a German passport and spent the rest of the day eating, speaking and trading in German.
Guten Tag. Guten Tag. Ich möchte ein Chips and Cola bitte.
Ja. Das ist ein kleines Cola für dich.
Dankeschön.
Bitteschön.
The centre provides an alternative teaching tool to primary and secondary schools, which include German in their curriculum.
Lots of studies have been done, and the way to teach children various activities is to actually get them hands-on.
Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It's a design that has launched airborne wind sports onto the international market. The new glider uses lightweight metals in its construction, has a bladed wing shape and can be assembled in just 7 minutes. And it's gained instant credibility. Newcastle's Rick Duncan won the Open State title over the weekend with one, and the first 3 places of the B grade were all won using the new glider.
You build a new glider and you think, yeah, everything's right. And then when you get such a wide variety of people flying and doing well, it sort of says it all, I think.
Newcastle's Neva Ball was also on target to take the women's division, but controversy over where she landed dropped her to 2nd place. The decision almost prompted a team protest.
We were considering that, but she's pretty much certain to get onto the Australian team, so I guess she'll get her own back later.
The titles held across the mountain ranges and plains of Tamworth weren't all perfect flying. In one race, Rick had to rely on the hospitality of a local farmer.
I actually landed one day out quite a ways from a road near a small farmhouse. It was on course, but I didn't intend to land there, but I couldn't stay up, and a chap gave me a lift out there, and it was really good.
But it's anything but a turbulent road ahead for wind sports. Earlier this week, their new glider was given American design approval, opening up a whole new market, while the Japanese have already placed an order for 100.
Stillform Engineering secured 2 separate contracts in July to build 4 boilers, all bound for Thailand. It was work well timed for the company, trying to survive in a competitive market.
It's meant a great deal for us. It meant at the time that we're able to keep some employees that we're considering putting off, but more importantly, we're able to put on another 30-odd people.
Today, the first 2 boilers were transported from Stillform's worksite near the West Basin Wharves to the Dutch vessel Torres. The 125-tonne constructions were individually lifted by the ship's crane into the hull, where they were securely welded for the long journey ahead. The remaining 2 boilers will be completed and shipped out late next month.
This sort of work, you're competing against the Japanese, the Europeans, Koreans. So, yes, it's very, very competitive.
The $3 million contract has helped launch Stillform's international reputation. The company's performance already taking the interest of other overseas firms.
The fact that people have been here to see what we've done and left inquiries with us, with ABB and other companies, that would indicate that we may be successful in the future.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
During the next 2 months, Ray Chappell will release the state government's official policy on regional development. The minister has met with representatives from 11 regions. Today was the Hunter's turn.
We're pulling together a synthesis, if you like, of all of the information that will enable government to respond to the requirements of regions in a better and more positive way.
Mr Chappell wants to see the Hunter work as a region to encourage industry and business, not as separate communities. He says one example of this is a wool handling facility proposed for Rutherford. The state government has announced it will fund an $18,000 feasibility study into the project. If it's found to be feasible, the facility will be built on land here at the Rutherford Industrial Estate. It could employ up to 200 people and will handle most of the wool in the state destined for export. Member for Maitland, Peter Blackmore, has campaigned hard to get the study funded. He believes the project will benefit not only this region, but also the northwest of the state.
Wool comes from various parts of New South Wales, would be handled here in Maitland, then distributed by rail, by road, through the Port of Newcastle. So it becomes a regional industry, a regional input, and something that would, I believe, benefit the industry tremendously, as well as the people of New South Wales and the Hunter Valley.
Luke and Kevin Murphy took up gymnastics when they found most of the sports offered at school were boring. Last week, 15-year-old Luke was named Hunter Gymnast of the Year after winning every event at the championships. He has progressed so quickly that he's now surpassed the knowledge of his coach and has actually been teaching himself.
What I'm aiming for is to get a scholarship to the AIS and maybe from there make it to the 2000 Olympics.
Brother Kevin is also chasing an Olympics chance, but isn't in a rush to get there.
I'll probably be a bit young for the 2000. Hopefully I could go to the 2004.
Coaches say Kevin has amazing strength in his shoulders and has an advanced sense of mental planning for his moves. The pair are two of the 4 boys selected from across the state to train with an elite Institute of Sport team in Sydney. But at the moment, both continue their day-to-day workouts at the Maitland Police Youth Club, and it's proving to be a strong breeding ground for the sport. 16-year-old Alison Mead is top of the ladies' division for the Hunter and also on the shortlist for state selection. Alison is now concentrating on perfecting her routines for next year's Nationals. This afternoon, 3 of the crews took to the harbour to get a feel for the local wind shifts. The 18-footers are the fastest class around at the moment, and obviously with the extra speed comes the added danger of accidents.
In the harbour it's a bit of a drag race here, a lot more will come down to tactics, and but the plus side of it will give the spectators a lot more of a chance to have a look and come and see how good these things actually are.
Darren Nicholson and his boat Row to Shears will be the only local yacht in the race, dominated by Sydney crews. After plenty of years' practice on the harbour, he knows you can't drop your concentration for a moment.
One wrong move, if you get a hard puff of breeze, the boats bear away. You basically have to go where the spinnaker takes you, and you might have calculated you'll get round a rock or a buoy, and you might not.
The Travellers' Cup is actually worth very little prize money. The crews do it mainly for the chance to add their name to the Cup, alongside yachtsmen like Ian Murray, a multiple winner. Because Newcastle Harbour isn't very wide, the yachts will be very close to the shore, giving spectators a sensational view. The first race starts tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 from the Port Hunter Sailing Club. Neil Fletcher is a bitter man today after spending 60 to 70 hours a week getting the breakers back on track. He says he was given no option by the board but to resign.
The overtones that I was given was that I hadn't achieved what I was expected to achieve in the time that I was there, and that they were looking to put somebody else in my spot with a higher profile to try and attract more corporate dollars to the club.
Board Chairman Alan Wennon says it has nothing to do with the club's on-field performance, but Fletcher's contract was due for review at tonight's board meeting and he might not have had total support.
Your members and the directors, even Neil himself, will give 100%, 150% I might add, but we've got to look at 200% and we've got to keep the ball rolling. We're on a bit of a roll now and we've got to continue doing.
And he makes no secret of their plans to snare someone with a proven track record in bringing in revenue.
You can have a club with administration and you can hire people to do accounts, but you've got to have a more dynamic person in the marketing field as an example, West or the Knights or the Falcons. You've got to get out there and attract corporate dollars.
As a parting shot, Fletcher says a change of face won't work a miracle on the balance sheet.
Solution to the problem, not a short-term one, and the fact that one person is expected to carry so much, it's a little unrealistic, and I think that they should have a long, hard look at their future before committing themselves to trying to find a superhuman being to take my job.
And last night, despite drawing 0-0 with West Adelaide, the Breakers picked up 1 point for the away game.
This old and damaged bus pass is destined to become a relic if State Transit's replacement solves some common problems.
People could throw them out the window and give them to other people to use, and they kept on falling apart.
Students at Katara High School have been issued with a magnetic stripe pass. No longer is the old paper ticket flash before the driver, now a computer does all the work.
On that magnetic pass is a time control that says that if the ticket gets dipped more than once within 5 minutes, then the alarm will go off, and that's just to stop students passing them back to other students and trying to get a free ride.
And you can't go to your friend's house or something with this one because it's a different route number. So if your friend lives over there and you live over there, you can't go to your friend's house.
The new model will take care of such an abuse of the free travel system.
This is the whole problem for changing the technology, is to make sure that the students only travel once on the ticket that's being issued.
The new passes will be trialled here at Katara High until the end of school term. If successful, the system will be introduced to 15,000 students next year.
This will give us boarding pass information which tells us where the students are getting on, which buses they're getting on, which allows us then to go back and review the network to say, yes, we can provide better service by knowing where the buses and the students need to go.
Set up above the old city arcade, the executive gym spreads over 2 floors. The first level is open to the public and fitted out with an aerobics floor and the latest weight machines.
We went to Japan last year, 13 months ago, and America, and we did the whole tour of the fitness industry, and the equipment that we have is like no other in Australia.
The upper level, open only to members, is a lot quieter, no loud music and the option of a massage, sauna and spa. The club has only been open for 2 days and the owners claim they've already been booked for several corporate conferences. Management hope their complex will play an important role in the renaissance of the inner city. You won't find any high-tech ingenuity here. Most of the chariots selected for Saturday night's derby have been given a last-minute reprieve from the dump. Brothers Darren and Jason Russell have both entered and won't be thinking of brotherly love when they match up.
Well, if he gets in my road, I'll drive through him.
Like most of their counterparts, they've disconnected their car's mufflers.
I think it's really just for the show. They like to get people to look at your car because of the roar.
That's a legal alteration, but many drivers are keen to pull off a dirty trick or two to win a share of the $5,000 in prize money.
They fill up half of the doors with concrete and in the boot too, so it won't bend.
Others add weight by filling their tyres with water. Anyone caught out, though, is disqualified. Even without the tricks, just about every hit is bone-jarring.
The idea is just get in the car, go and get hit. You know you're going to get hit. That way you got the right feeling for it. You don't get stiffed up and that. You don't get hurt actually on the day. It's the day after that hurts.
I think one guy had a broken ankle or something, just from where the side of the car crushes in on your foot.
The only reason they stop is because their car runs out of petrol or is battered into an undrivable wreck.
The boot ends up in the back window, or the boot lock ends up in the back seat. The bonnet, it's usually up in the air somewhere. All the doors get ripped off it. You know, you get pretty beaten about, in other words.
Brendan and his team hope to be amongst Saturday night's winners. They just hope they can start the car before then. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Next time you're shopping in Newcastle, you could be asked to take part in a special survey.
What's the main sort of parking you will use today? David Jones. And why choose that type of parking?
Commissioned by Council, the Hunter Valley Research Foundation today began gathering responses to shoppers' parking habits following the removal of meters.
Surveying them to find out how they feel about shopping and using services in the CBD, how often they come into the CBD, and how they feel generally about parking in the CBD.
The survey is only one of many studies to be carried out during the 6-month trial.
We're also going to conduct a turnover and accumulation study later on in the trial to measure how the spaces are actually being used. And in addition to that, we're getting an indication from a number of retailers in the CBD and businesses to see what effect it might have had on sales during the period.
Results from the various studies will be compiled into a special report to be considered by Council early next year. Before the meters are removed permanently, it will be up to retailers to decide if they're prepared to fund the $500,000 a year raised in revenue.
We've got to have a successful trial, and I think the early indications are that that is the case. And in addition to that, we need to then agree on how to fund the removal of the meters permanently.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Not coming home from the Great War meant just that. 1 in 5 Aussie diggers was killed overseas. Only one Australian body, that of a commander, was returned from Gallipoli. It wasn't until the Vietnam War that our war dead were routinely returned to Australia. 2,000 soldiers from Newcastle and the Hunter died in the First War. 98-year-old Dave Shearman was recovering from wounds in England when the armistice was announced.
Thank the all our God. There's a headline on the papers and it was my reaction also.
Thinning ranks of diggers and their widows still come to remember. Ted Kenner wears the Victoria Cross he won for taking on a machine gun post and clearing the way for his mates in World War II.
I'm only the one that's privileged to wear it, but I wear it for everyone.
The remembrance ceremony in Civic Park saw shoppers stop and the faces of a new generation who came to learn. It was a moving moment when the public was invited to lay individual tributes to the fallen.
Everybody should be sure that it goes on, not for our sakes, not for us old fellows, but for all the younger generation coming on. They should understand that over 100,000 in 2 world wars, that's apart from Vietnam, gave their all for what we enjoy today.
At the going down in the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them
Anne Riley's works are inspired by ancient Irish tombs and rituals of seasonal renewal performed in them. Her oils link the ancient experience with the contemporary world.
They're all sort of stages and different sort of changes and experiences in humanity's existence. Things like birth, death, change, growth, creation, destruction, things that affect every person from the beginning of time.
Putting the finishing touches on his installation today, Robert Gillett. His work puts the senses to full use. It features oil paintings and 72 tobacco tins filled with odds and ends hoarded over the years to reflect memory, time and place.
People keep things to keep their memories alive, and the tobacco tins were something that people keep nails or memories in. So that was virtually the idea of using the tins with the mixed media inside.
The gallery's third exhibit features the results of various assignments given to first and second year Newcastle University industrial design students. The technical challenges varied from making flying machines to reinventing a coffee pot designed loosely around a musical instrument to designing a carry bag to fit comfortably to the body. The exhibition's open tonight.
The top kickers are lining up for the money with a new incentive scheme to pay out $10,000 to the deadliest boot. In season 93, the Knights kicked only 46% of their chances. The Knights sorely missed the kicking of Johnny Schuster, who averaged more than 70% last year. Under the scheme, sponsored by Boots Plumbing, any kicker in the top 3 grades who cracks the 70% mark will be in the running for a share of the money.
I tell you what, if no one gets it this next year, 94, at jackpots to $20,000, I'm kicking.
Statistics show that teams that make the semi-finals always have a reliable kicker. Peter Ryan, NBN News. This is not the sort of area you'd expect in a study on pollution, but a $100,000 program is underway to stop the flow of nitrogen and phosphorus into our rivers.
What we hope to do with this process is to strip some of that nutrient out so as that when the water finally makes it to the river, that we have less problems.
Under the program, Dungog dairy farmer James Hobson has installed a series of traps and ponds to break down the high levels of nutrients generated by his cow's manure during milking time. Figures show across the Hunter alone, more than 1,000 kilos of nitrogen run off dairy farms into the river each day. And farmers are realising this cannot continue.
I think landholders have come to realise that they've got to get their act together and keep their waste on their own properties, not have it going into the river.
With the runoff going from pond to pond, nutrients are broken down by special algae and plants. By the end of the process, the water will be used for irrigation. The nitrogen levels cut from 60 parts per million to just 2 or 3 parts. It's a dramatic drop, but farmers are just a part of the blue-green algae problem. Scientists say urban runoff and town sewage must also be targeted to clean up our rivers. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Nelson Bay is well known to those who love boating, and this weekend will be no different as thousands of ocean lovers flock to the regional boat show. It's the largest of its kind outside Sydney. Now in its 3rd year, it keeps getting bigger.
We're about 50% up on space on last year. We've had to take over the adjacent car park and, we've gone from strength to strength.
There's everything on display from boating equipment to this flagship of the fleet, the 52-foot Steba luxury cruiser. It's yours for just under $1 million. There are rare wooden boats, ocean-going racing craft and fishing vessels of all makes, including this sleek 22-foot utility craft. It was built in Wyong and is described as the fishing boat of the future. There's also a Northern Territory fishing boat used for luring barramundi. While those businesses which attend the show report steady sales, it's mainly a weekend for those who would if they could.
People can come along and dream and just wonder one day how they can put that money in the water.
"26-year-old David Cullen ended up in this creek bed after losing control of his vehicle on the Dungog to Gresford Road around 6:30 last night. Trapped by his leg under the steering column, desperate cries for help went unnoticed.
People were obviously driving past. He'd been breaking whatever was loose in the vehicle off and trying to throw it up onto the road. And even one of the door linings, he tore that off, put a piece of metal on it and was obviously been waving that as a flag to try and attract attention.
A passing Shortland electricity field officer raised the alarm just after 8:30 this morning. SES, ambulance and fire units helped in the rescue operation. Rescue workers say it was a lucky escape. Had the storm been more severe, the water level would have risen dramatically in just a matter of minutes.
The water could have come up over top of the vehicle, another 18 inch, another half a metre or something like that, and he would have been in big trouble. And it could have led to a lot more serious had there been heavy rain.
So he could have drowned?
He could have drowned, yes.
Mr Cullen was flown by the rescue helicopter to the Royal Newcastle Hospital, suffering hypothermia, leg injuries and severe bruising. He remains in a stable condition. Melinda Smith, NBN News.